Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition, what I'm dubbing Bishop Jackson's Video Journal. And I'm glad to be back with you again today. I want to bring these updates to you as often as I possibly can. I'd like to set a regular time to do them so that you can anticipate them better and so that we can announce them, but we're working on that. But the first thing I want to let you know is that on May the 1st, in lieu of what we're going to be rallies around the country out in the open, we have decided instead to go with a live streamed event that will happen at 12 noon Eastern time on May the 1st, 12 noon Eastern time on May the 1st. And at that event, you're going to hear from Alan West. You're going to hear from Reverend Rafael Cruz. You're going to hear from Clare Lopez. You're going to hear from Jerome Corsi, investigative journalist with a lot of insight. You're going to hear from Trevor Loudon, who is probably one of the most renowned researchers on the infiltration of our country by socialism and communism and the people who've been involved with those organizations that promote that ideology. So it's going to be a blockbuster live streamed event, and you can see it right here. We're going to also show it on our YouTube channel. But also, if you're an organizational head or you have an entity that you represent and you'd like to show it on your website, all you have to do is go to our website, sign up to partner with us for this, and we will send you a link before the event so that you can actually show it on your own website. That's coming up on May 1st, 12 noon Eastern time. Great lineup. Of course, I will be speaking. Alan West, Reverend Rafael Cruz, Trevor Loudon, Clare Lopez, Jerome Corsi, and we're going to have a number of drop-ins as well from some of the most important conservative leaders around the country who have really been in this battle for a long, long time. Because folks, look, I'm convinced of this, and you all know I'm not a conspiratorial thinker. I just think that can be such lazy thinking. But you don't have to have a conspiracy when everybody kind of agrees on what the agenda is. And really, the left has agreed on their agenda. Their agenda is to turn America into a collectivist nation. It is to basically destroy free enterprise, at least as we know it. It is to destroy the First Amendment, religious liberty, freedom of speech as we know it, destroy the Second Amendment as we know it, and turn America into a nation of dependence and, in effect, slaves. Look, I've said this before. Socialism is communism, and communism is slavery. Therefore, socialism ultimately is slavery. And we as Americans can never accept it as the future of our country. And so these speakers are going to come and share some very, very important things with you about exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it, how you can help, how you can get involved. Now, right now, it is clear to me that this communist Chinese Wuhan virus, also known as COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus, but I prefer to call it for really what it is. It is the communist Chinese Wuhan virus. This thing comes out of a city where there are not one, but two biomilitary facilities that do experimentation on biochemical warfare. That's where it came from, the city where that stuff happens. In fact, the first place it appeared was in a wet market, not 300 yards from one of those biomedical facilities. So you tell me. Here again, you don't have to be a conspiratorial thinker to raise the question, is this thing intentional? Was maybe the creation of the virus intentional, but the release of the virus unintentional? Is the whole thing intentional? I mean, look, this communist Chinese government is wicked, it's evil, it's totalitarian, it's authoritarian, but they're not stupid. They're not stupid. They're wicked, but they know exactly what they're doing. I'm going to come to you all sometime and talk to you about China very, very extensively because I'm doing some research and study on that. And folks, what I'm learning is very, very disturbing. I'm sure you all know. If you don't, let me tell you. Smithfield Foods is a $4.5 billion company. Did you know that Smithfield Foods, which supplies, my understanding, about 5% of our meat supplies, is owned by the communist Chinese government? Well, no, they'll say, oh, it's a Chinese company. Folks, anything that is owned by a Chinese national is owned by the Communist Chinese government, because there is no freedom there like what we know here. People can own companies here and they own property here, and it does not belong to the government, really. It belongs to them. But that's not the case in China. China controls everything and everybody. The Communist Chinese regime controls everything and everybody. In fact, folks, the more I study this, the more I'm convinced that Xi Jinping is really the reincarnation, not literally, of course, but really the political reincarnation of Chairman Mao. Mao Zedong, one of the most brutal, bloodthirsty, murderous, communist, totalitarian dictators in the history of mankind. You know, Mao killed more people than Hitler. And Xi Jinping is modeling himself after Mao. And that's the nature of the regime that we're dealing with. It is a communist, totalitarian regime. You mean to tell me they've got control of 5% of our food supplies? Not to mention a whole bunch of other companies and industries in our country. These are not our friends. These people are not even friendly adversaries. They are mortal enemies. That's not what we want. It's not what the American people want. But I think that's the way the Chinese communist regime sees it. And we better wake up to that fact. And here again, this communist Chinese Wuhan virus is a terrible thing to have happen to our country. But you know, it may be a blessing in disguise insofar as it wakes us up to the fact that this regime means us no good. And we better start dealing with them as such. And people may say, oh, listen to him. He's a warmonger. Folks, the last thing in the world I want is a war between the United States of America and any other nation on earth. And I mean that. But you know, George Washington said the best way to avoid war is to be prepared for it. So you want to secure the peace, then you've got to take enemies and adversaries seriously, so that they know that the price of attacking you, the price of trying to bring you to your knees, is simply too high to be willing to pay. So that's the best way. And we've got a president, I believe, who understands that and will deal with Xi Jinping and deal with the Communist Chinese Politburo and that whole wicked system accordingly. So that's important. Now, the second thing I want to say is, folks, I've been talking about this for weeks, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I know I just happen to have a platform to speak to a lot of people. I'm sure there are others who have been saying the same thing, maybe not able to speak to as many people about it, but I know there are others. I'm not the only one. But folks, I've been saying all along that this virus, this pandemic, has opened a door of opportunity for would-be totalitarianists and would-be American mini dictators to carry out their wicked fantasies of having control over everything and everybody. I've been saying this long before some of the incidents that have happened. Because what I've been saying is the Constitution doesn't get suspended in a crisis. The Constitution, in fact, ought to be more vigilantly guarded during a crisis, because that's precisely the moment at which someone may think they can take advantage of it and rob us of our rights and have everybody comply because we think, well, it's a crisis and we've got to go along. No, we don't have to go along. I mean, this governor in Michigan tried to control whether people can buy seeds for their garden and trying to basically regulate who can go into what you can buy in a store. I mean, all over the country, we've got national parks with literally millions of acres closed, as if you can't practice social distancing in a national park. We got a father arrested at a park with his wife and daughter, the three of them playing together. The father arrested in front of his daughter and his wife. because they happen to be in the park. And after all, you've been banned from coming outside. Employers giving people papers so that if they're stopped by law enforcement, they can show their papers to show that they have a right to be out. Hey, folks, this stuff is absolutely unprecedented in the United States of America. And every single one of us ought to be concerned about it. And look, the list just goes on and on. Pastors being arrested, churches having church in their parking lots, being told you can't do that. Thank God, I think it's the mayor of Louisville got slapped down and told you can't stop churches from having parking lot services. That is unconstitutional. That's a violation of their constitutional rights. So we've got a situation in which Gavin Newsom saying he can declare martial law. One sheriff saying that the governor said that once he gave this order, your rights were suspended. Folks, I've got news for you and for every other politician in America, particularly every executive, every mayor, every city manager, every governor. You don't have the right to give the American people orders to do anything. We don't work for them. They work for us. They have the right to order us to do anything. And the fact that they stand up and issue some edict doesn't mean a thing. As far as I'm concerned, it's just hot air. Now, I've never recommended that the American people completely disregard the regulations and the advice that has been given, the guidelines, if you will, that have been given by the President of the United States. I've never said that. What I've said, though, is that when these governors take it upon themselves to tell people you will be arrested, you will be fined, you can be imprisoned for daring to even be outside, that is a bridge too far. And as you all, I'm sure, have noticed, this very day, people in Ohio, in Michigan, are protesting and saying enough is enough. And it's about time, because we are setting precedents that will come back to haunt us. When some politician rears up and says, well, we did it during the coronavirus, we can do it again. Well, it was wrong then, and it'll be wrong if they try to do it again. And it's up to us as the American people to say, look, enough is enough. Now, you got places where people have been ordered not to see their own family members. That is utterly insane. Or being told that even in a church setting, that where you can space people apart 6 feet or more, families shouldn't be sitting together. I mean, since when did the government have the authority to tell people they can't be around their own families? So folks, thank God. In North Carolina, I was told by a pastor friend of mine in North Carolina, in Raleigh, North Carolina, I think yesterday, there was a protest there. Some 2,000, 2,500 people showed up to say enough is enough. Enough is enough. See, for one thing, folks, let's face it, we've been sold a bill of goods. This coronavirus, all things taken, all things considered, in my view, is no more deadly than the swine flu. The swine flu in 2009 killed 18,000 people as far as we know. But 61 million Americans got infected by it. The swine flu, by the way, was infecting and killing younger people, people under 65. Not that the lives of people over 65 aren't valuable. I'm over 65. Our lives are valuable. But my point is that the coronavirus seems to be attacking people with underlying conditions who are also elderly. In other words, they have what the medical profession is now calling comorbidities, which is a way of saying other things that afflict them that could kill them. But it is not having any significant impact on younger people who are healthy. So when this thing was first announced, we were told, in effect, we're all going to die. Everybody's going to die. It's going to kill us all. I mean, that was the attitude. Now we're finding out that there's nothing like 2.2 million Americans could die. We're finding out there's nothing like that. And by the way, folks, I think today the number was 26,000 Americans who died, and every death is precious. And I mean that. I'm a pastor. I care about people. And obviously we don't want anybody to die. But let me tell you something, and I'm absolutely convinced of this, and I don't say this lightly. Those numbers are inflated, because I've now been told by at least 3 medical doctors who are involved in this that any death by any person who happens to have the virus is attributed to the virus, even if the virus didn't kill them. In other words, a person dies of a heart attack. They find out that the person has the virus, okay? Either they were diagnosed before, or they find out in an autopsy. That death is attributed to the virus. Person has a stroke, dies of the stroke. That stroke is that death, I should say, is attributed to the virus. Any death of any person who has it, it's attributed to the virus, even though, in fact, the last doctor I talked to told me, well, we know that it's not really the virus that killed them. Well, then why are we counting that as a death? Well, the doctors aren't being political per se, but I think that what happens is exactly what the left likes. A consensus has developed that that's the way to report it. Well, consensus is not science, folks. Consensus is politics. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these deaths that we're seeing reported are not coronavirus deaths. It is really just that, plain and simple. Well, we don't know how many. See, I think one of the things we ought to demand is a strict accounting that says, unless the person's, in other words, here's how it could go. If this person was likely to have died from the underlying disease anyway, and could likely have died at this very time, that's not a coronavirus death. That's a death from a heart attack. That's a death from cancer. That's a death from a stroke or some other comorbidity. So, folks, we're not even being told the truth. And I'll tell you why I think that is. I think it is because particularly Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx are creatures of the left. In my view, they are wholly owned by Bill Gates. Bill Gates has a financial interest in this. He is selling the vaccines and has invested heavily in that. And he wants to insert everybody with a chip. He's got this chip, this what he's calling a digital tattoo, that supposedly you can make a permanent part of a person's body that will allow you to monitor them. That's for, now they're talking about for the virus, but he's been working on this stuff for several years, and the purpose of it is to be able to give everyone a digital identity. And my understanding from the reporting of Jerome Corsi is that Bill Gates and George Soros have both had involvement or investment in the Wuhan biomedical labs. So, folks, this thing is ugly. And just telling the American people, shut up. You're not an expert. You don't know what you're talking about. We do. Listen to us, shut up and obey. Well, we're not going to do that. We're simply not going to do that. We will do what we believe to be reasonable and rational. But as far as people staying away from their families and all this nonsense that some of these people have tried to impose, absolutely not. I want to say God bless the people of Ohio and the people of Michigan and the people of North Carolina who are out there protesting and letting it be known that we are not lemmings. We are not sycophants of an overweening, overwhelming, overpowering government that gets to order us around. It doesn't work that way in the United States of America. It works that way in communist China, but it doesn't work that way here. And I'm glad that people are now standing up. And I'm hearing rumors that the president may be about to sort of move Fauci on, which in my view, he needs to do. because Fauci was the one who initially said it was no problem. And then all of a sudden it was the end of the world. And all the time behind him is a little puppet master, Bill Gates, who's poured $100 million into Fauci's organization. And my understanding, too, is, by the way, that Fauci's got interest in patents for some of these vaccines that are being developed by Bill Gates. So see, folks, all this stuff is not as it would seem. You know, this is one of the reasons why I trust the American people more than I trust these pundits and experts. Because I really believe that the American people always ultimately get it right. And so the experts will tell you, oh, no, this is the way it is. And the American people start investigating and raising questions and asking questions. And all of a sudden, well, no, it won't be 2.2 million. It might be 240,000. Well, it won't be 240,000. Well, it might be 100,000. Well, it might not be that bad. Well, we've now plateaued. Well, guess what? 17 million people are now out of work. Small businesses have closed that will never reopen. Power has been ceded to the government that we're now going to have to fight to get back. And I don't mean fight violently, folks, but I mean we're going to have to, it's going to take a serious debate, and we're going to have to move at election time to sweep people out of office who have disregarded our God-given rights and tried to become little Chairman Maos while they had the opportunity. So I just want to encourage you folks, stick with it. Don't let anybody cow you into believing that every word you hear from one of these so-called experts is manna from on high. And thank God for the President of the United States, because he's been questioning this stuff all along. But I know, realizing too, that if he had not followed basically the advice of the experts, they would have called the man a mass murderer. Some of them are still trying to do that anyway, like it's all his fault. I mean, it's preposterous. It's preposterous. And so, folks, we've just got to stay in this fight. I would just urge you, while you may be hunkered down at home, you be thinking about every patriotic, Constitution-minded person you know, and make sure they're registered to vote, and make sure they understand that we're going to have to vote in November as if our lives depended on it, because they do. Because I really believe there are people who have a very different vision for this country. And if nothing is done by the American people to stop them, they will implement it, even if it means running over our dead bodies. And folks, I am not kidding when I say that. I just think, well, you look at this virus. I really believe that there are people in the left who would rather see the economy shut down so that more and more people can depend upon government, as opposed, and they think they can use that to get rid of President Trump, as opposed to having a vibrant economy in which people are working and taking care of their families and gainfully employed and independent and going on about their business. I think they would much, much rather have a dependent culture, and this virus provides just the chance they've been waiting for. Governor Cuomo said, when will we return to normal? Well, we won't return to normal. There'll be a new normal. We've heard them saying, yeah, things will never be the way they were before. Jim Clyburn said, now we can put on restrictions in keeping with our vision. Gavin Newsom saying, yes, this virus is going to usher in a new progressive era. You got Americans sick and dying, and what are they thinking? How can we get power and keep it and use the deaths of Americans to do so? So when I say, even if it means running over our dead bodies, folks, I don't think that's any exaggeration whatsoever. I think that's exactly the way they feel. Their power is more important than we the people. And the only thing standing between us and a totalitarian regime of some kind even though they would never call themselves that and they would never own that label. But you can see what's happening with some of these governors and mayors and the way they're acting. You see the totalitarian impulse in them. I mean, it's stark for all to see. I mean, can you imagine the mayor of Louisville? If you go to a church parking lot for a service, in your car, we're going to take your license plates and you will be held accountable. What is this, a police state? Let me say one other thing, folks. Our police officers, who I really love and respect and admire, because they've got a very, very difficult job to do. And most of them do it with tremendous courage and honor and decency. And I know a bunch of police officers all over this country and work with many of them. I feel for them because they're being used in some cases and don't realize it, because they think they're serving the community, and what they really end up doing is serving the interests of some little budding dictator who wants to prove that they've got the power and the people don't. And so you better obey. And I just want to encourage any police officers who are listening now, remember, you have an oath to the law and to the Constitution, and a governor's order is not law. Unless he's gone to your legislature and had a law passed giving him certain authority, his order is not law. We've got an order by the governor of Virginia. That thing is just as lawless as a bank robbery. That's right, and I mean it. It's just as lawless as a bank robbery. There's nothing in the Virginia Constitution and there's nothing in the Virginia Code that gives Governor Ralph Northam the right to order Virginia citizens to do anything. Now, if the legislature had met and passed a temporary law, well, you could say, okay, due process has been followed, and then you could fight that out in the courts, or you could protest, or you could say, I still think that what the legislature did is wrong. He didn't even go to the legislature. He just assumed upon himself the power to shut Virginia down until June the 10th. June the 10th, folks. And we're supposed to just say, oh, okay, well, after all, you are the governor. I want to remind him and remind you all, we defeated King George. Okay? We defeated him. We don't have kings here. They're busy pointing the finger at the president, and the president has been restrained. The president hasn't ordered anybody. What the president has said is basically he's got a right to go over the heads of governors, and I think constitutionally, ultimately, he does. But the president of the United States has never, I order the American people to do this or that. He's never done that. It's these little Napoleons who've taken it upon themselves to do that. And Governor Ralph Northam is the worst among the bunch, because he had the nerve to shut this state down until June the 10th. Folks, that's an abomination. That's a crime against the people of Virginia. He ought to know better. And he passing a bunch of unconstitutional laws right now, curtailing Second Amendment rights and curtailing the First Amendment rights of people of faith, forcing a whole lot of LGBT nonsense on folks. And just trampling the rights of the church. And then, but rest assured, he's made sure that the abortion mills can go full force in the killing of babies. Yeah, he's done that. Removed all medical hospital standards for abortion clinics. They can just kill babies all day long, and he just rejoices. He and his little cohorts just rejoice in that. And I say to you Virginians watching me right now, we got to get rid of these folks. And here again, just so I'm not misunderstood, I mean at the ballot box. Okay. We've got to use every constitutional mechanism available to. By the way, he also removed voter ID and opened it up for not even absentee voting now, but early voting. So basically, in other words, he's done what Democrats all across the country have done. Make sure you can cheat. Make sure you can steal elections when you need to. But folks, they're the kind of thieves. They'll only steal the election when they really need to. Make sure illegal immigrants can vote. Make sure we can ballot harvest and find whatever number of votes we need to win, even if we have to make them up. Yeah, that's what we got governing the state of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry and James Madison and James Monroe. It's a travesty, folks. This man doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as those great patriots. They were about trying to preserve life, and he's trying to take it from the most innocent among us. And they were trying to preserve the liberty of our citizens, and he's trying to take it. And they pledged their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor, and he has no honor to pledge. So, folks, and let me say again, I know I'm being a little bit direct, a little bit forceful here. I want you all to know I don't have a single hateful bone in my body against Ralph Northam. I don't like anything he stands for. I hate all of his ideas, but I pray for him and hope that he repents before he leaves this earth in his sinful condition and goes to hell, because that's exactly where he's going to go in the present condition he's in. That's right. I said it and I don't take it back, not for a second. Because look, folks, here's the reality. Our founding fathers understood that there is a God in heaven who sits high and looks low. He rules and super rules over the affairs of mankind, and every single one of us is going to answer to him. And they built this nation around the idea that the people needed to have faith in God and to understand that they're answerable to him, so that their personal virtue would help them in the process of self-governance. You don't need the heavy hand of some bureaucrat over your head, because self-governance is what causes you to do what is right. So they promoted the Bible and they promoted faith in God. George Washington, in his first Thanksgiving proclamation, said, "It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his commands, to humbly implore his favor and protection, and be grateful for his benefits." Yeah, that's George Washington, the first president of the United States, a Virginian. And now we've got a Virginian who, as far as I'm concerned, whose whole life is a blasphemy to God, in the office of governor. Got to vote him out, folks. Well, he's got to leave anyway, but we got to make sure that not only does he leave, but that his political career is over. Let him go be a pediatrician for anybody stupid enough to take their child to this would-be baby killer. I wouldn't let, if I had a young child, I wouldn't let my child within 1,000 miles of this man. So folks, I pray for him. I pray for his soul, because he needs it. He really does. He needs it. So I'll remind you all that this nation was built on faith in Almighty God, and that we've got to keep that faith in the midst of this crisis, because that's what's going to get us through. And so, folks, don't lose heart. Don't give in. Don't give up. Don't back down. In fact, I've written a pledge, and I would invite you to go to our website. It may not be up there just yet, but it will be soon, to go to our website. I've used it in speeches many times, and I will paraphrase it to you. You probably heard me say it. But you can go and you can sign it and say, keep it. We'll give you a copy that you can actually mount and hang on the wall. And it says something to this effect: if I have to be the last person standing up for that flag, if I have to be the last person standing up for our Constitution, if I have to be the last person standing up for our liberty, for our Judeo-Christian values, our free market, if I have to be the last person standing up, I will do it until I breathe my dying breath. But I will never give in. I will never give up. I will never back down. I will never quit. I will never allow this nation to become some sort of socialist, secularist, atheist, communist, Marxist nation. Never. I'm going to make sure that America remains the land of the free, because we are the home of the brave. And I'm going to make sure that America remains one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, because that's the only way we'll ever achieve liberty and indivisibility, is if we are under God. So, folks, just Stick with it, okay? Stick with it. I invite you all to join me. I'm on the radio Monday through Friday on AFR.net. If you don't have a radio station that airs our program anywhere near you, go to AFR.net from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And we have a conference call every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. If you want to get invited to that conference call, we have some outstanding guests on that conference call, folks. I mean, we really do have some outstanding guests. I mean, we've had Reverend Rafael Cruz, who I've mentioned. We've had Alan West, who I've mentioned. We've got coming up Stephen Mosher, the guy who wrote the book, the Bully of Asia, about communist China. We're going to have Matt Staver on, who represented Reverend Dr. Rodney Howard Brown, who got arrested down in Tampa. We had Reverend Rodney Howard Brown on just this past Tuesday. We have some outstanding people, General Jerry Boykin, Jenny Thomas. We have some outstanding people on these calls every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, and you get a chance to talk to them because we give them a chance to speak, and then we give people who have called in an opportunity to join in the discussion. So I would invite you to join me at any one of these venues. And of course, I'm going to keep coming to you with Bishop Jackson's video journal from time to time. So in the meantime, God bless you. I love you. Love the American people. Love our country. And we want to see the best for everybody. We just know that some of the people in power don't know what that is. And so we got to make sure that they are voted out of office so we can have people in there who do know what it is. The word of God says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people mourn. And we've got some wicked folks, like right here in Virginia, ruling. And we're mourning as a result. But you know what? Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning, because we're going to elect some righteous people to govern our commonwealth. And we're going to keep this righteous president in November and elect some more righteous people to help govern us. And we're going to rejoice. God bless you all. Talk to you next time.